Welcome to Feedback Not Received. I'm excited about this one today, folks. First of all, I look cute as hell today. I got my hair cut yesterday, and my stylist, they ask, like, how do you want it styled at the end? And I was like, I don't care, do whatever you want, because I actually hate getting my hair cut, but I'll talk about that in a second. So she curled my hair a little bit, and, I really like my stylist, so I'm very happy with that. I love this little top that I have. It's actually a crop top, but you don't get to see my midriff. I had some yellow eyeshadow. I feel very summery, even though it's not summer. It is still April. It is spring, but it has been warmer the past few days. He has arrived. Yes. So I swear to God, he was sleeping in another room. As soon as he hears me start talking, he's like, I must contribute to this. So he's here again. Happens every time I start the episode. I should do a mock episode start so that he'll come and then he'll settle down and then I can actually record, but whatever, here we are. So I look cute as hell. Let's hear a little bit of commotion for just the general vibes, because yes, even though it is not summer, it is definitely still spring. Barely just spring, honestly, but it was like 18 degrees yesterday. So like, being Canadian, I'm like, this is summer. Honestly, that is close. Like, there will be days in the summer that are like 18 degrees. So I'm happy. My mental health is thriving. We needed a little bit of like a sunny sort of slightly 70s inspired vibe today, which makes me very happy. Hairstylists. I'm excited. There's something I'm very excited to talk about today, but we'll get to it. I have to leave you in suspense. I have to build the tension and build the drama, but I will talk about hairstylists for a second. Personally, I do hate getting my hair cut, and for a very long time, it's partially probably because when I was a kid, my mom would just take us to her hairstylist to get our hair cuts. Which makes sense because like that was the stylist that she would go to, but she didn't take us to like a kid's cut salon. She would just take us to her stylist when she went to get her haircut, and she would get us I had a horrendous like bob for a very large portion of my childhood that did not really work with my hair texture, and honestly, the best way to describe it is coconut head from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide is what I look like, maybe with like a slightly longer bob. And also I'm relatively sure that my mom's hairstylist did not like children. So it was all around just like not an enjoyable experience getting my hair cut as a kid. But also as an adult, I think it's taken me a long time to realize that the sensory experience of getting my hair cut is highly unpleasant for me personally. I don't like being touched by people in general. Even my own family have learned, anyway, I don't like being randomly touched by people. Hair salons are loud, and you have to decide what you want. I don't like it, but I am vain, and I am vain specifically about my hair because, again, I will be vain for a second and say that I think my hair is one of my best features. So, for a very long time in my young adulthood, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, partially also it's I have ADHD. So scheduling appointments is tricky for me already. And what would happen is I would get my hair cut and then I would forget about it. I literally would go full year without getting my hair cut most of the time, which just doesn't make me look good. My hair grows out and then it gets heavy at the ends. There's no shape to it. And so that wasn't good, but I also would just forget to make hair appointments forever. And I also hated getting my hair cut, still hate getting my hair cut. So compounding factors. Eventually I did find a salon at home near my house where I was oh yes, perfect vibes. I love the stylist. It was very chill. She would do exactly what I wanted. It was great. And then I moved to a different city a few years back. Oh my God, it took me so long to find a good stylist here in the city that I live in now. Not to mention that I cut my own hair during COVID and gave myself a cute little bob with bangs. I sort of returned to the coconut head style, but I did a better job for my own hair texture. And you know what? Here's a claim to flame brag that I can have is that I cut my own hair during COVID, and then like I cut it like once during COVID, like during the lockdowns. And then the next time I went to get my hair cut, it was like fairly grown out at that point, but my hairstylist was like, you know, honestly, of all the COVID cuts that I have seen since the lockdowns, yours is actually not that bad. Because like she was like, you know, normally people would end up with like very uneven length, and mine was like a little bit uneven, but she was like, oh, like it's grown out pretty well. Like you did a pretty good job. We don't have to do too much like repairing on this one. And I was like, haha, look at me now. But I will never cut my own hair again because good Lord, that's stressful. So it took me a very long time to find a salon that I liked here in the city that I live in now. And actually the first salon that I went to here in my current city was horrendous. I did not like the stylist, and he did a terrible job on my hair. Anyway, it looked awful. I did not like it at all. So then I went like another like 6 months to a year after that without getting a haircut, and then eventually finally found my current stylist, and God bless her. Oh, she's wonderful, and she does a great job, and the salon is like super chill. And anyway, I just hate, but even with all of that, I still just don't like getting my hair cut. I find it an exhausting experience. But I've also gotten better where like now I will actually just straight up book my next hair appointment like when I'm already in the salon, which has kept me on track to get my hair cut every few months, which is, you know, much better for all of us involved. So anyway, we can all have some commotion for the hair. You'll probably never see it styled like this ever again because I'm incredibly lazy about styling my hair. But anyway, I look cute and we can celebrate that. And as always, well, not as always, as frequently happens, we are orange today. I'm matching my cat again. But I know, it's summery vibes today. Summery vibes. We can all at least pretend that it's summer, even though it's only April. Soon enough, it will be summer. As long as it doesn't snow again. With all that said, let's get into the meat of the episode. So there is something that I'm very excited to talk about that I have really been wanting to talk about for quite a long time, but I've had to wait until it actually happened. And well, we'll see. This may end up being the bulk of the episode, otherwise, or it'll probably be a significant chunk of the episode, but this may be a one-hit wonder sort of episode, like a one-topic wonder, but we'll see. So, what is this miraculous topic that I've been waiting to talk about, and why? This week, Mike's Mike released Lost Season 3 recap, an appropriately unhinged recap of Lost Season 3. Mike's Mike is one of my favorite YouTubers, to be honest, and he has done several appropriately unhinged recaps of different shows. Glee and Pretty Little Liars, and now he's doing Lost, I think, are the 3 series that he's done. And they're just brilliant. And he's, like I said, he's one of my favorite YouTubers. So these are his 3 like long form series, because like series recaps tend to be very, very long. But he also does like shorter form, like 20 to 30 minute long videos on his channel as well. And it's all like pop culture analysis, pop culture discussion. He loves to talk about movies, especially. And I love his analysis of movies, and his sense of humor is like exactly my sense of humor too. So like it's all very like referential to like memes and stuff, but at the same time he's in a different part of the internet than I am in. So even most of the memes that he references, I don't know, but I still like it. I just love his style. I love his cadence. I love the way he narrates. I love the way he scripts things. And yes, he released on Friday this week, so literally yesterday, an appropriately unhinged recap of Lost Season 3. And I have been waiting. It's like Mike's Mike fans will understand. Father has returned for more. He has fed us. We are grateful for this video because it's been like 8 or 9 months since an appropriately unhinged. Oh, sorry, Bubba. Oh, I scratched him on the nose. It's been 8 or 9 months since an appropriately unhinged recap of Lost Season 2. It's been a long time. And I think it's been at this point almost 2 years or maybe over 2 years since he released the Lost Season 1 video. So like we have been waiting. And to be clear, I'm not complaining about waiting, because one of the reasons that I really, really love Mike's content, one of the reasons I really admire him as a creator, is the amount of thought and effort that he puts into his content. So all of his appropriately unhinged recaps are like have a core concept to them for the recap. And previously, like with Glee and with Pretty Little Liars. Oh, and Gossip Girl. Oh my God, how could I forget about Gossip Girl? He's also currently working on, like, I believe he's currently staggering Gossip Girl and Lost at the moment. So, sorry. They all have a concept. So, for example, the Gossip Girl recaps are, each episode is accompanied by a fake magazine cover that's like based on like real sort of pop culture magazine covers that Mike has found, but he's like arranged it and like replaced the headlines and stuff with the characters and events from that episode of the show. So imagine doing that for every single episode of a multi-season long show that you're recapping, and like they're incredibly well done because like they capture the core beats of each episode. So like I think he said in one of his, it may be the first Gossip Girl recap, he was like, I wanted you to be able to like look at these magazine covers and like know what was happening just by looking at the cover, and he's done that. Like the amount of effort that takes, right? Even for me as someone, like I'm not an organized person. So even just putting together like a recap series like that, remembering like to write down like, oh, this is a key plot point here, and then it'll come back in this and da-da-da-da-da. It's just staggering to me to begin with. And then that additional layer of like effort and, I don't know, attention that he puts into all of his videos. Like I admire it incredibly, and also they're incredibly entertaining. I think he's so funny. And I've never watched Pretty Little Liars. I've never watched Gossip Girl. I've never watched Lost. I had never watched Glee, except I watched Mike's unhinged recaps of Glee, and then that made me watch Glee. Like I didn't watch Glee when all of my classmates in middle school were all like, when it was airing live, right? But watching Mike's recaps, I was like, oh, let me watch Glee. And I am so invested in the plot of Lost via Mike's recaps, even though I've never watched it. And I realize I could go and watch Lost if I wanted to. I don't have to be held in suspense about the plot, but I don't actually want to watch Lost. I want to watch someone recap Lost for me. I want to watch Mike's recap Lost for me. It's hard to explain. Like, I don't know. I don't want to watch the show. I just want to watch the recap. I love video essays in general, and so like I think like recap series sort of fall under the same umbrella of like longer form, like structured content about a specific topic. And I do really enjoy video essays, but I'm also very particular about the recap content and the video essays that I like to watch, and it really does come down to presentation. So all that to say, I'm a great admirer of Mike's work, and I was very happy to have the Lost Season 3 video this week. And again, to reiterate, these are like, he has like a core concept running through them, which I can sort of see the bigger picture, and he embedded some sort of like riddle puzzle in this this Season 3 recap video that he said would like reveal the core concept for the whole recap series in general. And I could see where the puzzle was happening, and I was like, I am not going to solve this puzzle. So at some point I will go, and I hope that some good person in the comments has solved the puzzle so that I can read about it, because that's very, very cool. And props to Mr. Microphone for putting in all that work, right? But I'm not going to do the puzzle because I am lazy, to be honest. But anyway, brilliant videos. That is not the only reason that I'm going to talk about Mike's though. But I will just say, if you have not watched his content, if you have not watched his recap series, highly recommend. They're incredibly entertaining. Sometimes you put on like a podcast or a video essay in the background while you play video games or while you clean or whatever. But I'm like, no. With a Mike's video, I am I am watching for like 4 hours. I'm like, I'm dialed in. I'm locked in on what's happening on the plot of Lost. I need to be told. And no, I'm not going to watch. Well, I think the thing is, it's like, I don't want to watch all 6 seasons and 23 episodes per season of Lost, because it just doesn't interest me to do so. And also at that point, I definitely wouldn't be paying attention, and I definitely would miss all like the mystery and whatever that's going on with Lost. But I do want to know. I want to know. And I feel the same way sometimes about like video game lore, like particularly with horror video games, because I'm a big baby. I'm a sensitive girl. I do not like horror as a genre. I do not like to play horror games. I do not like to consume horror content or horror media to be specific, but like a lot of horror video games have very like cool in-depth lore, and so I'm like, I must know the lore, and so I will watch other people explain the lore of a horror video game to me because I would like to know. And I feel the same way about Lost. Not that it's scary, but it's just like, I'm nosy. I'm indulging my nosy bitch tendencies. I want to know the lore, but I don't actually want to have to watch the thing. So thank you to the video essayists and recappers who do those things for us. But the other reason that I was very excited that this video came out this week, and the reason I want to talk about it, is because I have what I think is a brilliant proposal from my perspective. This is me again putting on my like, if I was helping you with like your content, here's what I would do. Here's what I think should happen. Okay. Mike's Mike and Jenny Nicholson should do a collab together. Can we hear a bit of like applause, please? It's a brilliant idea. So as I've already said, Mike's Mike is he does long form like recap series. He also has a podcast called Jumping in an Elevator, which is also very entertaining, highly recommend. And he also does shorter form, like 20, 30 minute long videos on his main channel of like usually about movies or pop culture or something like that. And he has a very like detailed way of approaching like breaking down things in still a very humorous way. Jenny Nicholson is a pretty well-known YouTuber, but in case you aren't aware of who Jenny Nicholson is, well, I'll just say this. Her most recent video was the spectacular failure of the Star Wars hotel, which like I think was like, she was the main character of the internet for a few weeks after that video dropped. So you may have actually seen that, even if you weren't sure, even if you didn't know who Jenny Nicholson was, you might have seen that video, or you might have seen people talking about that video. Jenny Nicholson is also a YouTuber. She's been around for a long time. She started off mostly making like Star Wars content, but in recent years has sort of pivoted to just like general stuff that she's interested in, that she likes. She's very into theme parks. She's very into animatronics. She's also very into like certain pop culture properties and media analysis as well. Now you may be thinking, the Star Wars Hotel video I think came out like maybe over a year ago at this point, and prior to the Star Wars Hotel video, I think it had also been like about a year or maybe more since the last main channel video that she posted. So I know there's a lot of people on the internet who, even if you know who Jenny Nicholson is, there's a lot of people who are like, wait, is she even like still making videos? Yes, the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why I know that. Jenny Nicholson has a Patreon that has like, I don't know the exact numbers, somewhere like 40 or to like 80,000, somewhere in that number is like what's in my head, Patreon subscribers. And she posts monthly what she calls Patreon ramble videos on her Patreon. Those are on topics voted on by her patrons, where she literally, it's similar to a podcast style. They're, like she says, they're ramble videos where they're less scripted, although she still puts an incredible amount of effort into these Patreon videos, typically over an hour long, on a topic of the patrons choosing, but typically the topics that the patrons vote on are also topics that Jenny herself would, because it's like, well, if you're proposing that she spend an hour or more talking about a particular topic, it has to be something that she can actually talk about. So it's still stuff that like she's interested in, but they are less formal, less scripted, with less, editing. Like she'll intercut clips and stuff sometimes if it's relevant to whatever she's talking about, but like just like more casual. And so she posts there every single month. And sometimes multiple videos there a month if she posts like a bonus video, or sometimes she'll post sneak peeks of videos that she's working on. And I'm not going to talk too much about her, like the actual content of her Patreon, because I feel like that would be like poor form of me. But all that to say is, yes, she's still actively creating. She's actively working on videos, but she's mostly behind her Patreon, which is understandable. I think she's spoken about this before, of like feeling a lot of anxiety and pressure about like posting videos online. I think existing as a content creator online for as long as she has, and particularly as a woman online for as long as she has, I think she's experienced just about every single like bad faith argument with any of the content that she's posted, to the point where I think like she's talked about this before, sort of feeling like she has to preemptively think of every possible criticism and like find a way to address it in the video that she's making to avoid people, you know, making the absolute worst faith arguments and like criticizing her for like not actually valid reasons, right? So I think her reasoning generally is that she feels more comfortable behind a Patreon paywall because like it's still a massive community. Like she has more paying subscribers on her Patreon than a lot of like active YouTubers do just on their like regular channels, right? So it's still a very large community, but it's obviously a much more easily controlled community where you can remove people who are actively trolling or bad actors or whatever. And generally the people who are paying to see your content for the most part are the ones who like want to be there, and it's going to create a more positive vibe. So I totally don't blame her for that. And by the way, her Patreon, the lowest tier is like $2 a month, and I have been subscribed for like a while, and it's totally worth it. I really admire her and I really love her content. So just shilling for Jenny Nicholson, but she deserves it. She deserves being shilled for because she's great. But why do I think Mike's Mike and Jenny Nicholson should collab? Allow me to present my argument for you. The first one being what I've kind of already touched on before, is that their approach to content creation reads very similarly to me from an outsider perspective. And again, like I am speaking I have no knowledge of either of these people personally, so I am speaking to purely their curated content creator persona, to be clear. So I'm not like, I can't make commentary on their actual real lives, right? However, speaking from the perspective of someone who has watched both of them for quite a while and who really enjoys both of their content, what I see happening is that they both have a very meticulous approach to their content, which might seem like a weird first proposition for why I think they should collab, but I think it makes sense in that, like, if you're thinking of like a collab between creators, you don't just have to think about like, did the audiences kind of match up? It's also like, would they work together kind of? And based on the way that they both seem to approach their content, it seems like they have a sort of similar mindset to content creation, which I think is important. And I think would lead to like good vibing between their sort of styles of creation, which is important. The other thing is they have similar, but not entirely overlapping things that they like to talk about, I guess is the best way to put it, topics of their videos, where they are both very much in the sort of pop culture and media analysis sphere of things. But I think, generally speaking, Mike's Mike tends to approach things from, like, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but like more of the, like, the pop culture elements of things. So like when he talks about, you know, what would be like a bad movie, he never frames it that way, but he's looking at the references, he's looking at the inspirations, he's looking at like the work, the media as it exists within the framework of pop culture as a whole. People who watch his videos, I hope that makes sense as a way to describe that. Jenny Nicholson also looks at that, but more so from a media critique perspective of like, they both take the work as is. Like, they're not expecting the things that they're talking about to be something different than what they are. But Jenny's approach is more so to say, here are the ways in which I think this thing has internal logic and internal structure, or doesn't, or is missing pieces, or here's what it should be doing to hold that internal logic. Like if we're expecting this work, we're taking it as is, but internally to that work, it fails to do X, Y, and Z, or it succeeds to do X, Y, and Z. Sorry, I'm Canadian. Z, not Z. Whereas Mike's Mike is looking at the internal structure of the work and also then how it interlinks out to pop culture. Like, that's not a perfect description of how they approach things, but I think if you watch either of their content, it'll make sense. And that's not to say that either approach is better or worse. Like I said, I'm a great admirer and enjoyer and consumer of both of their content. But the reason I think this would make for a good collab is because I think I can see the ways that they think about media matching up enough that they would understand what the other person means when they're talking about something, but their approaches are different enough, the way they engage with things are different enough that I think it would make for interesting content, where it wouldn't just be two people sitting in a room going, exactly, yeah, exactly, and that's exactly, but like, they each have some slightly different perspective that would make for a very interesting conversation, I think, between the two of them. Okay. Which, again, it's I'm trying my best to describe it for people who may not be familiar with one or both of them. But if you are familiar with one or both of them, I think you'll understand what I mean. Or even just like go watch one of their videos real quick and you'll see what I mean. Now, the actual types of videos that they tend to make are slightly different, I will admit. So Mike's Mike, like I've said, sort of goes back and forth between his shorter form, 20 to 30 minute long videos and his longer form series recaps. And then he also has a podcast, which is just him hosting, like, what's his tagline? The podcast where I full stop. So it's just him for the most part. He has had a few episodes, though, where he has had guest collaborators. Keep that in mind. Jenny tends to do just overall longer form content, specifically in her more recent content. Some of her older stuff, she would do slightly shorter form, more frequent uploads, but generally speaking, she's moved towards longer form, less frequent uploads for her main channel. She doesn't have like a secondary channel or anything, but she does have her Patreon rambles, which I would liken to a highly edited podcast sort of style, which I think is a fair descriptor. Now, what I, in my ideal world, would love to see would be to see these two do a collab on one of those longer form style videos or video series, maybe like one video on Jenny's channel, one video on Mike's channel. I don't think that's going to happen for many, many reasons. And I think that's a bit too much to say. I think this should happen for two creators who have not collabed together in the past. So I think it's more realistic to say I think they should do a collab on Mike's podcast, potentially, and maybe have Mike be on a Patreon video, although that is unprecedented, so I don't know if that would be entirely acceptable to Jenny's patrons. But, you know, as a bonus video compared to like the regular monthly rambles, maybe they would accept it, or just straight up an episode of Mike's podcast. Okay. I think would fit the best. Another important point that I need to make is that, like I said, Mike has collabed with other creators on his podcast before, and he has guested on a couple of other podcasts as well. Okay, he has done collabs. Jenny has not done a ton of collabs that I know of. However, I recently learned that she did guest on a podcast called For Your Entertainment, which I believe is hosted by Ryan Bergara, one of the former BuzzFeed Unsolved hosts and now one of the hosts on Watcher Entertainment. I'm pretty sure. Not entirely sure, though. But she did guest on an episode of For Your Entertainment, which is a theme park focused podcast. Okay. So I don't know where else she has collabed recently or within recent memory, but that one was only like a year ago. So she has done similar podcast guest collabs at least one time. Okay. And it makes perfect sense that it was a theme park focused podcast because, like I said, a large portion of her area of interest is in theme parks, and she knows a lot about theme parks. Like, I would be like, yeah, she's a guest you want on your theme park focused podcast because she knows her shit. So there is a track record of both of them collabing with people on similar things, podcast style. And also, at the very least, Mike's Mike knows who Jenny Nicholson is, because Mike, one of his podcast episodes at the end of last year was like awards for 2024, like best song of 2024, best whatever, and one of the categories was best YouTube video of 2024. And I don't remember if Jenny's Star Wars video won that category for Mike's Mike, but she was in his list of nominees. That her spectacular failure of the Star Wars hotel video was in Mike's list of best YouTube videos of 2024. So that means he knows who she is, and he talked briefly about the Star Wars hotel video and like with, you know, respect and admiration for like the work that it is, right? So that's good. Now, I don't know if Jenny knows who Mike is because I don't know how much these days she consumes like YouTube content. She doesn't talk about it as much. She doesn't really talk about, she does talk about other content creators, but not frequently. And I also don't follow her on like Twitter or like other socials. So anyone who, like, I know she is like more active sometimes on, at least on Twitter, or she was. So maybe she's talked about stuff there before, but I all that to say is I don't have conclusive evidence that Jenny Nicholson knows or consumes Mike's content, but at least he knows and has seen at least one of her videos. Okay. So another point in the they should collab bucket. all of the evidence thus far, to me, points to they would have a very fun and interesting conversation from a viewer perspective on like a podcast style episode, like an episode of Mike's podcast, or just like a bonus video for Jenny's Patreon or whatever. I think they would have a very interesting conversation. Or even if they did like a panel at a con or something together where they were talking about something, just like anything to get those two talking to each other about something, right? Now, this is all I feel I'm building a strong argument for why these two should collab. But there remains the question of what would they talk about? What would they talk about that neither of them have talked about yet? Because they've both covered quite a vast range of popular culture, media, analysis sort of topics. The only thing neither of them have covered, well, not the only thing, a thing that neither of them have covered that they potentially could would be Once Upon a Time. But that it's a little outside of Mike's area of interest, and I think that is more well suited to a slightly longer video series. Side note, if you want to watch a really good Once Upon a Time recap series, Haley Whipjack is a YouTuber who's doing Once Upon a Time season by season recap, and I'm really enjoying it. Another show that I haven't watched, and I'm loving the recap. So just go watch Haley Whipjack stuff. And I do think Once Upon a Time, as a long series with like a lot going on, is more suited to a longer form video series like that. So not Once Upon a Time. Like, I don't think any sort of television property would really be the best thing for either of them to talk about, like, or not for either, but for them to talk about in a sort of podcast style collab with each other. Because I also think it's the sort of thing that like they would want to be more meticulous and detailed about from their own content creation standpoint. So here is what I propose. They should do a podcast episode about Now You See Me 3. They have both, in various videos, discussed Now You See Me. Mike's Mike also discussed Now You See Me 2. Jenny made brief mention of Now You See Me 2. That was in one of her Patreon videos, by the way, so you won't see it on her main channel. And I think they both have a deep appreciation for bad movies. And I don't mean like I mean fun bad in a fun way, right? Like, and they both, I think, enjoyed a lot of the same things about the Now You See Me movies, or particularly the first one. I think they both agreed that the second one is like not very good, which is fair. I agree too. But they've both talked about Now You See Me. They've both made mention of like, oh, there's going to be a third Now You See Me, like at various points. Now You See Me 3 is coming out at the end of this year. So like, I think maybe in November. So it's coming out relatively soon, but not so soon that like there would be no time for organizing a collab, right? And I think they could just have, like, I think because it would come with the background of both of them already having the knowledge and love and appreciation for the Now You See Me movies already. And I would just love to see them talk about Now You See Me 3. I think it would be so good. It would be so entertaining. And for all of the reasons I have already outlined, the alignment between the way they create content, the alignment between the ways that they engage with media, but also the significant differences that I think would make for a really interesting conversation, and their appreciation for fun, bad movies, I think would make for just like a great conversation. Now, there is another wrench in the works here, in that Jenny Nicholson is American and lives in California, I think. She lives in the United States. Mike's Mike is Australian and lives in Australia, obviously. So that's a bit tricky. Now, there's always the possibility to do a like Zoom collab, right? And I have seen lots of podcasts that either do co-hosting via, like, do remote co-hosts, or, you know, I've seen episodes of podcasts where they have the guest like in remotely. Like, it's an option. I don't personally love it. I just think the vibes are a little different. Like, we know this, right? Like, when you're on a video call, particularly a video call with someone that you don't actually know well personally, it's a lot harder to have like natural sort of banter, natural vibes. And like, you know, if the connection's bad, if the audio's bad, I just think there's like, it wouldn't be my personal preference. Wouldn't be my preference to have them do a video collab, or like a Zoom collab, video call collab. So this is another reason why I think the Now You See Me 3 is a good option, because they have several months from now, if they do what they should and listen to me, as we know, everyone should listen to me and my opinions are correct and true. They have several months from now to organize a potential collab. I've just had a biggest moment of deja vu. Did I talk about this in a different episode? I don't think so. Maybe I've just been literally, because I've known that Mike's season 3 Lost recap is like, he's been talking about it coming out for a while. It just took a long time. Don't blame him for that. Maybe I've just been thinking about this so much that I've imagined what I would say about this topic for a very long time. I'll have to double check and make sure I'm not repeating. You know what? Whatever. Fuck it. If I am, who cares? You get to hear me make a very good argument once again. Anyway, what I was saying is, because the Now You See Me 3 is coming out at the end of this year, it's a very long time for them to organize a potential time to collab that would still give them enough time to see the movie, but it would allow whatever thing they create to come out in a timely manner that's still like relevant to the movie being released, which I think is good. Because Jenny has spoken in the past about how she finds it disheartening if she thinks like she's too late on the uptake for something, kind of. She's talked about a few video ideas that she scrapped because she kind of felt like, oh, by the time it would be done, everyone else would have already talked about it, kind of. So I think keeping it timely is kind of important in this case. And, you know, people travel for work all the time. I don't know if Jenny's planning to go to Australia at any time in the near future, but maybe one of them's going to a convention that's sort of a halfway between point or something. Anyway, I think they could do it. I think they could pull it off. Also, Jenny Nicholson travels to go to theme parks and stuff, so I don't know if there's anything in Australia that's like theme park related. But certainly Mike has gone to America for work things before, so, you know, there's plenty of options. They should do it. So, there's my pitch for why Jenny Nicholson and Mike should collab together. I think I'm right, as always. And I would love it. And it's a little bit selfish of me because, like I said, I really enjoy both of their content, and I just would love to see that conversation unfold of like just anything. But that's my pitch. You should agree with me because I am right. And we have still some time left in the episode, so we can talk about a couple other things. Here's a good one. A colossal squid was filmed alive and in its natural habitat for the first time this week by a team of researchers, which is so incredibly cool. I've talked before about how I'm kind of a freak for the deep ocean. I think it's so cool. And so this is like incredible to me. Any deep ocean fans, you'll get me on this one. Now, important to note, it's a baby colossal squid. So I think they said it was like approximately a foot long, a little see-through, clear foot-long little baby squid. When adult colossal squids can reach, like, I think, up to 7 meters or 23 feet for the Americans in length. So obviously this baby, I think they said, it was like about a foot long. So significantly smaller than the actual adult of the species. However, it's still very cool, because for a very long time, colossal squids, we didn't even know if they were actually even like real. And then it was like, when they like, oh my God, the cat, went from not even knowing if they were real to people finding dead specimens or dying specimens near the surface. I mean, like most deep ocean creatures, the only time they really go near the surface is when they're dying, as we saw with that anglerfish a couple months ago. But even still, even though it's just a baby, this is like such a cool like discovery, such a cool thing to have happen. The cat's sitting behind me. I'm just so excited. Ocean science is so cool. Like actual science, by the way, where they're actually trying to like observe species in their natural habitat. But like, what I wouldn't give for footage of an adult colossal squid in its natural habitat. It would be so cool. Someday we'll see it, I'm sure. But like, obviously the ocean is massive, so it's like, I love the videos of like, hello. I love the footage from the researchers operating any of those under like the deep ocean like filming vessel. Oh, yeah, that was very cool. In opposite news, we go from the deep ocean, and now we turn our attention to space and go from cool researchers actually advancing science to fucking dumb rich people being annoying. As I'm sure most people have seen, Katy Perry went on a Blue Origin. Sorry, when I was talking about the ocean. Katy Perry was on a Blue Origin space flight this week and she was like, what is that? What's going on with that woman? This is my question, and I think the question lots of people have. Now, it was an all-female crew. It was like 11 women. And so it was like, oh my God, an all-female space crew. But then it's like, well, no, it's like, that's not what Blue Origin is. Like, they're not doing science. They're going to space and then they're returning to Earth. Like, that's not, anyway. I think this type of thing of like, oh, the first all-female space crew, like, wow, Katy Perry went to space. In like 2010, maybe 2010 to like 2014 would have been like, yes, girl boss, like women in space, Katy Perry, whoa. But it's like you're approximately 15 years late for that. Nobody wants yes, girl boss, Katy Perry, rich people in space when the planet is dying and gestures broadly to everything that's happening right now. Nobody wants to see Katy Perry going to space. It's simply, we do not care, and the yas girl boss era of internet feminism is long past. No. No. Thank you. Capitalist girl boss Katy Perry, no thank you. Jeff Bezos, fuck Jeff Bezos. Like, it's just like nobody liked that. Nobody liked that. So yeah, pretty much the complete opposite of cool science happening in the ocean seas, colossal squid, stupid rich people do capitalism in space and pollute the planet. I don't know. What is going... Everything Katy Perry does just like baffles me. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. I'm like, what? Why are you making the choices that you are making? What are you doing out there, Katy Perry? Whatever. Yes, girl boss. We love capitalism. Other things on the list. Ooh, Wheel of Time season 3 finale was this week. I actually took me a very long time to start watching season 3 because I didn't have Amazon Prime and I didn't want to get it, but I finally have watched season 3 and I actually started watching it last week, so I caught up just in time. Like, I caught up the day before the finale, so it was like kind of perfect because then I didn't have to wait a week for the finale. But yes, Wheel of Time season 3 finale was this week, and honestly, I think generally the consensus from fans is that season 3 is the best of the 3 seasons. Now, I haven't read the Wheel of Time books, partially because, honestly, I am an enjoyer of the fantasy genre, but I have very little patience for what I perceive to be overly long epic fantasy, particularly the like 80s, 90s, early 2000s style of epic fantasy, but also like the Brandon Sanderson style of epic fantasy. Like, I don't have the patience for it. And it's not because I don't have the patience to engage with a well-crafted long piece of literature. It's just male fantasy authors is what I'll say. And I haven't read Wheel of Time, and I honestly don't have a ton of interest in reading the Wheel of Time series. Based on what I have seen people say about it, particularly based on what friends of mine have said about how blatantly apparent Robert Jordan's kinks are through the whole thing, which is another thing that's like surprisingly common with a lot of male fantasy authors. And it's like, could you not? Why do you have to make this everyone else's problem? Like, if I want to read about these things, I will read romantasy. We could do that, right? Oh, but romantasy gets such flack because it's a female-dominated genre, but Robert Jordan can be out here talking about how the main characters are getting spanked every other page and stripped and whipped with their giant boobs bouncing, breasting boobily down the stairs, and somehow that's still iconic epic fantasy literature. I'm not mad about it. I promise. But I don't want to read Wheel of Time. But the point I was making was Wheel of Time Season 3. From what I've seen, both book readers and non-book readers have basically said Season 3 has been incredibly well done, because this was particularly, like, Season 1 was incredibly poorly received by people who have read the books. I enjoyed Season 1, although then, even as a non-book reader, someone who's simply watched the 3 seasons of the show, I will also say Season 3 is evidently the strongest. Even going back and rewatching Season 1, like, there are pieces now rewatching where I'm like, I don't care. I'm fast forwarding through this piece because, like, it wasn't very well written. It wasn't, like, this storyline wasn't particularly well handled or whatever. So Season 3 has no moments like that where I'm like, oh, like, skip. I don't care what's going on. It's very concise. In fact, the one thing I would say it suffers from is that it's an 8-episode season, and, like, epic fantasy in general suffers for having to be abridged in that way. But I think they've done a really good job. Yeah, my only complaint is I was like, no, like, now I'm gonna have to wait another, like, 2 years if Season 4 even happens, because Amazon hasn't actually renewed them for Season 4 yet, as far as I know, as of recording. So yeah, my only complaint is, like, can we go back? Can we go back to 23 episode seasons? Can we go back to the Lost style of things? Can we please have more episodes? But whatever. The production value is beautiful. The costume design is, like, beautiful. I love the costumes in that show. I love the sets in that show. I love their commitment to filming on location for a lot of it. Like, the storylines are broken up. We're following multiple characters across multiple storylines in very different places in the world. And even just the use of the physical environment is really well done to telegraph to the watcher, like, okay, now we're back on this storyline with just, like, this establishing shot. You know, we don't have to have the script at the bottom saying, okay, now we're back in the desert with Rand or whatever. Spoilers, I guess. Minor spoilers. I don't know. Yeah, it's a really well done show. My one complaint, actually, there are a few pieces of dialogue this season where I was like, it was so on the nose that, like, it was literally just dialogue that you can tell is purely written so that people watching the show, like, the characters, you're like, no one would say that. Like, there's a moment in one of the episodes where a character is like, oh, it's been 7 days, like, we should do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, even worse, she says, it's been 7 days since blank and 2 days since so we should do, I'm trying to spoil things, where it's like, yeah, all the characters in the scene know that it's been 7 days since that one thing and 2 days since that other thing. Like, nobody walks into a room and goes, oh, it's been this long since this thing happened, because everyone in the room already knows. Like, it's not even like there was a new character arriving who was like, all right, what's the situation? Like, give me the lowdown. And this other character's like, well, it's been this long. Like, even that I appreciate more than just someone, hello, person who already knows what's happening. Allow me to tell you what is happening, right? Like, it's very obviously just telegraphed for the watcher to be like, oh yes, time has passed, right? But I think it's one of those things that, because of the constraints on how much, like, they had 8 episodes of, like, roughly, like, maybe slightly more than an hour each to do all this, they didn't have time for lengthy establishing shots of time passing, for example. There's another example where some magic is cast that would only be felt by these 2 characters, and the character basically says, there, I've done the magic, to the character who would already know that the magic has been done, which again is like, obviously that was just for the audience to be like, oh, she's done the thing, right? And they probably, I think, could have found a way to visualize that for the audience, because all of the other magic in the show, the weaving, is beautiful and has only gotten better since season 1. It was just this one thing that was like, it's not like a weave magic, so I guess that's why, but, like, I think they could have found a way to visualize it. But again, like, more special effects, more time spent on deciding what to do in that sense, more time spent perhaps having to make sure the audience knows that that happened, so it's just more efficient to have a character say, this thing has happened now. But it did, like, there was more than one moment like that through this season, so, you know, it's a relatively minor complaint, but it did make me go, like, I recognize the practical need sometimes for very blatant expository dialogue. We'll put it that way. But yeah, highly recommend. If you haven't seen Wheel of Time, even if you have read the books and you heard bad things about the show, I think it's worth, now particularly that season 3 is out, I think one of the concerns maybe that a lot of people who have read the books have, which as always is like, oh, well, they've changed this thing in season 1. How is that going to, what ramifications is that going to have for this plot line that happens much later on in the books? But now that they've changed this one early thing, how is that plot line going to resolve? I think maybe a lot of book readers are now seeing sort of how the writers are choosing to alter specific plot lines, remove specific plot lines, because like, again, they have to be efficient with their use of time on screen. And I think maybe now if you were to start the show as a book reader and be able to watch season 1, 2, and 3, it might be a little more comforting than having just season 1 where you're like, what the fuck is going on and how are they going to clean up this mess that they've made? And I get it, right? There have been movies made of book series that I enjoy that have been bad, because a lot of the time they are. Best example I could think of would probably be Aragon. Any fans of Aragon will know that that movie is terrible. And at the same time, I'm sad that they never made more, but also there's a lot of points in that movie that you're like, how are they going to do that plot point now, right? I get it. But I think now even there's a lot, besides the people who are simply committed to disliking the show and hate watching it, because you can dislike it, you just don't have to watch it. But the people who have read the books, who are super fans of the books, who are committed to hate watching the show, obviously are never going to be convinced. But the people who are fans of the books, who have been giving the show a good faith opportunity to interpret the story, I think generally speaking what I've seen is people being quite satisfied with how it's going. Yeah. And as I say, as a person who hasn't read the books, I do notice, like, there is noticeable improvement even in the production quality, the dialogue, etc., from season 1 to season 3. So it's a really good series. I love me some fantasy. I also, controversial take maybe, enjoy Rings of Power, and I'm looking forward to season 3 of Rings of Power. So I love high fantasy. I just don't like long, drawn out, unnecessarily long epic fantasy because, well, it's not to my taste, I suppose. And all the other slanderous things I just said about male fantasy authors, but we'll ignore that. So yeah, that was fun. That was good. I think I'm glad that I caught up when I did. I did unfortunately get spoiled for kind of a major beat in the last episode because I didn't realize that it had released. Like, I knew it was coming out. I think it came out yesterday. No. Anyway, whenever the day it came out, I knew it was coming out that day, but I assumed it was coming out like in the evening of that day. I think it released actually, like, it was one of those early morning releases. So I was on the subreddit and I was like, let me make sure let me read the discussion threads or whatever to catch up before the new episode. And then I did inadvertently see a spoiler for episode 8, which was, normally I'm not a huge, like, I don't typically care that much about spoilers because I think if something is well written, if something is well made, then even if you know all of the plot beats going in, it should still be entertaining and enjoyable to watch unfold. Obviously, I don't think people should go out of their way to spoil things, and I don't typically go out of my way to seek out spoilers for shows and movies and books that I am actively engaging with. But normally I'm not like, oh, I'm so upset that I saw a spoiler, right? I'm typically it doesn't ruin my enjoyment. The one thing I did see, I'm not going to say what it is, obviously, because it is a major spoiler. The episode, like, this is not one of those things. If something's been out for like a year or more, I'm like, whatever, free reign to talk about the spoilers, like, at that point. This is not one of those cases, but the spoiler that I saw was a major spoiler and something that I was like, oh shit, I didn't expect that to happen. Okay, so it did, I think, the tension leading up to that moment when I was actually watching it, I think it would have been more enjoyable if I hadn't seen it because I was already anticipating the thing that happening, so I was taken a little bit out of the moment, but it's okay. It's kind of my own fault. I was stupid and I didn't realize that the episode had already come out, and I clicked on a thread that was marked as a spoiler, but I just assumed that it was a spoiler for the previous 7 episodes. Anyway, it's on me, it's my own fault, but it is what it is. We live, we move on. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other stuff. Look at my list again. Yeah, I have a couple other things written down, but nothing that I'm like, I really, really, really want to talk about this. It was more so, I write stuff down throughout the week that are potential topics, but maybe not the topics that I care the most about, so I will leave it at that for now. I'm so happy that I had something to talk about this week. I was so excited to talk about the Mike's Mike video and also my proposal for the Mike's Mike and Jenny Nicholson collab that should definitely happen. Because it's just fun when it's something that you really, really like, I've noticed this trend already with, like, when I'm making this show. I enjoy myself a lot more when there's stuff that I'm excited about to talk about. I think it's very easy to find stuff that upsets us on the internet, and it can make for entertaining content for me to be salty and aggro about stuff, and I do that. But it's a lot more fun when it's something that I like, I think. And in my opinion, makes for more enjoyable content. I can certainly talk at length about things that I like, more so than things that I don't like. So yeah, that's all. That's all. Yeah. I don't have a migraine this week. That's fun. So much of last episode was me talking about having a migraine. Sorry about that. But I mean, also, what am I supposed to do? If I have a migraine, I'm going to talk about having a migraine. Anyway, this is the end of the episode. As always, I'm sure there's things that I have missed. There's things that I chose not to talk about this week. But if you want to talk about them, you can go get your own microphone, start your own show, and talk about them there. Thanks for listening. Bye.